Hello Year 12, firstly I'm sorry that I can't be there to teach you in person today, but I have recorded our lesson just as it would be if I were in school, and it will likely be the same for tomorrow's lesson as well. And so I'd like you to start with a retrieval quiz as we would usually do, and I would like you to see if you can remember and recall the missing words from the following quotations, and then answer question 4 for me please. Spend no more than 5 minutes doing this. These are important quotations that I would like us to be able to remember by heart. Off you go. Okay then, so we can check our answers and you can tick or fix depending on whether you got them correct or not. So they were women who idolised their children, worshipped their husband, and esteemed it a holy privilege to efface themselves as individuals. Number 2 is about the parrot in the cage and also a language which no one understood. 3, looking at his wife as one looks at a valuable piece of personal property. And then finally, what is significant about Chopin's description of Edna's physical appearance? We've previously looked at physical manifestation and how Edna is described as handsome rather than beautiful. So she doesn't meet the traditional conventions of beauty, which suggests to us that she doesn't meet the conventions of society. There's also a description of her yellow-brown hair and her green-yellow eyes, which demonstrates that she's quite a conflicting character as well. You may have also recalled something about her strong, shapely hands. Okay, so I would like you, if you weren't here in the last lesson, I'd like you to begin this lesson by reading through chapter 6 again. It's only a short chapter. If you were in the last lesson, you've already done this, so you can skip ahead in a moment. But from this, I want to draw out 3 important quotations. The 2 contradictory pulses which impelled her. A certain light was beginning to dawn dimly within her, the light which, showing the way, forbids it. So those 2 quotations are from page 21. And then finally, the outward existence which conforms, the inward life which questions. Now these 3 quotations are particularly important because they demonstrate that Edna's a conflicted character. She's conflicted between her inner true thoughts and her outward appearance to society. At the moment, society and meeting those societal expectations seems to win out over her true desires, but Chopin uses the metaphor of light. A certain light was beginning to dawn dimly within her, to demonstrate her true self. And what awakens that light within her is her desire for Robert. So the light is a metaphor for her desire. And this is really important because we need to remember that a contemporary reader, a reader of the time, would have not recognised female desire as being a real thing that exists. And that's one of the things that makes Chopin's text so scandalous at the time. So Chopin presents her protagonist here as a character conflicted between meeting social expectations and her inner passions, as demonstrated by the light. The references to light are interesting because there are other references to light in various different chapters, and as we go forward we'll see more references to light, and that's something I'd like you to trace throughout the text. But light carries connotation of guidance, but also positive connotations as well, which indicates to us that the passion that's stirring within her, the desire that's stirring within her, isn't a negative thing. This is just Edna awakening to that desire within her. At the moment, as I've said though, society seems to win over. It's only her time on Grand Isle amongst the Creoles that allows her to start to loosen that exterior I don't know how to word it, that exterior performance for society and be more true to her inner thoughts. This last quotation, that outward existence which conforms, the inward life which questions, is really interesting to me because I think it demonstrates ideas about performativity and ideas about how meeting societal expectations is simply a performance, and quite often people suppress their inner thoughts in order to meet that social expectation. So that's a quotation I'd like us to really try hard to remember, and one we'll retrieve at the start of our next lesson. The outward existence which conforms, the inward life which questions. Moving forward then, chapter 7 is a really important chapter in terms of understanding a little bit about Edna and understanding how, as a character that seems to want to defy social expectations, she ended up meeting those conventions of society. She ended up married with children, performing that role of female of the time. So I'd like you, even if you've read it before, I'd like you to pause again and reread chapter 7 and see if you can trace any information about Chopin's attitudes to marriage and motherhood, and why Edna ended up marrying Leonce, even though they don't like each other that much. Okay, pause and read. Off you go. Fantastic. So again, I have picked out some important quotations that I'd like us to examine, and quotations that I would like us to learn. Now, it is an open book exam, which means that you will have a blank copy of The Awakening in front of you. However, I would like you to know a few key quotations off by heart because it will reduce time spent flicking through the book in the exam. It's a big enough text that still will present a challenge, particularly in terms of time. So these are the quotations that we are going to be looking at. I don't mind if you want to write some of your notes in your copies of The Awakening, if you have your own copy. I don't mind if you want to make these notes on paper, but these are the quotations that we will be looking at. So you might want to locate them and mark them in your copies now. The first one is the dual life, the outward existence which conforms, the inward life which questions. Loosen the mantle of reserve. Her marriage to Leonce Pontellier was purely an accident, in this respect resembling many other marriages which masquerade as the decrees of fate. And she was fond of her children in an uneven, impulsive way. You might have already noted them as you read through at the start, but we're going to go through each question one by one, and we're going to talk about what it means and why it's important and significant. The first one then, the dual life, the outward existence which conforms, the inward life which questions. So dual means a state of two. By using the word dual, Chopin suggests a separation between the true self and the public persona, demonstrating that she believes people in society do not act upon their true desires, but instead act in a way that is pleasing to society. So if I were writing my notes in my copy of The Awakening, I would circle the word dual and I would explain something similar. If I were making notes in my exercise book, I might write the quotation out and then draw some arrows off it with my explanation. I think the word conforms there is interesting as well, which demonstrates how people blindly do something and accept rules within society, and their exterior life kind of presents as though they've just accepted it. However, the verb questions positions the reader to actually consider their own place within society, and to consider as well whether they live a dual life, whether they have an outward existence which conforms and an inward life which questions. So that's the first of our important quotations. I also wanted us to take note of this quotation, loosen the mantle of reserve. So I've been doing some home learning with my children at home this week, and we've had to look at the earth and how the earth is structured. And the mantle that Chopin's referring to can be seen on this diagram. It's one of the outer layers of the earth. But as you can see, the earth has many layers. So what I believe Chopin is demonstrating to us is that Edna is starting to shed some of those outer layers and become more like her inner self, more like her core. So she's becoming to loosen some of those things that have been built by society. She's starting to get rid of some of those, the ways in which she meets expectations and isn't true to herself. And peeling back those layers, we start to see more of her true self. So on a surface level, this quotation seems to demonstrate that Edna is becoming more comfortable with herself. But on a deeper level, it seems to demonstrate the layers of the character Edna, and how the outer layers are all about conforming to social expectations, and she's losing those and becoming more like her true self. So for this one, I would like you in your exercise books to write down the quotation, and then, as we've practiced before, do it on a surface level, on a deeper level explanation. Off you go. Okay, our next quotation then. Her marriage to Leonce Pontellier was purely an accident, in this respect resembling many other marriages which masquerade as the decrees of fate. There are several important words here. We have purely, which means nothing more than, and simply. Accident, which carries negative connotations, indicates a lack of thought, something that causes harm, and something ultimately that's not desired. So we have a real negative view then of the marriage between Edna and Leonce. She talks about the other marriages of the time which masquerade as the decrees of fate. Masquerade being a verb, meaning to put on a mask, which again suggests that other people in society are simply performing the roles expected of them by society. So for this one, I would like you to answer the question, how does Chopin present marriage in this quotation, using a not only but also sentence? Off you go. Finally, I would like you to write a not only but also sentence about this quotation to demonstrate how Chopin shows us ideas about motherhood. Off you go. Okay, and our last activity, your exit task if you like, is to write out the quotations that we have analysed today and see if you can remember the words that fill in those gaps, and we'll start the next lesson with this as well. If you can submit a picture of your notes or any of the activities that you've done through Show My Homework, so I can track who's done the work and who will need to catch up with it, that would be great. Okay, thank you.